Charya is a lecturer at Azim Premji University, Bengaluru. Having completed a master's degree at St. Joseph's College, Bangalore, she has been teaching primarily at the undergraduate level for the past 6 years. She is also a part-time research scholar at Kuvempu University, Shimoga. Her title for today is borrowed from Gail Ombed's work, Seeking Begumpura, the Social Vision of Anti-Caste Intellectuals. Her doctoral thesis, also titled Post-Truth and the Rise of Cultural Nationalism in India, explores the growing distrust in media as well as the historical function of public intellectuals in the Indian context. I welcome Ms. Shruthi Charya to speak on Seeking Begambara.
Hello, I hope I'm audible. I would like to share my screen before I begin. Is my screen visible? Oh. Okay. Is it possible that I only share my slides? Is that an option here?
Yes. That's possible, yeah.
I don't see an option, is there?
Ms. Shruthi, if you can go to the share mode, you will have three options there. One will be to share your window,
Right.
or to share your entire screen, or to share a tab. If you're using Zoom, you can share a window. You can open that, keep it open, and it will give you that option. If you're using Google Slides, you can open it as a tab and share a tab.
Oh, I'm actually using the PowerPoint on my desktop. So when I share the window, this is what's
I think you're sharing your whole screen.
it says window though. Is this better? Can you see it? Is it better now?
No.
I think you'll have to click on the PPT.
Okay, let me see what can be done. Usually there's an option to just share the PPT, but I don't see that here. Sorry, just give me a second. I don't see an option.
Ms. Shruti, when you click that arrow, that upward arrow at the bottom of your screen, are you getting a smaller window with three options there? Oh.
Yeah, I get the three options: the window, the entire screen, and tab.
Yeah, so click on the window, not the screen.
Yeah. When I click on the window, also this is what's appearing.
Then try clicking on the screen and see if that is better.
Yeah, I think now it should work. Is it working?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, can you see my slides?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll begin. Hello, first of all, thank you for giving me the space to share what I've encountered. I'd mainly like to thank Joshua sir for thinking that I have something to say at all. And the organizing committee for making this possible. I'm by no means an expert on this topic. Like many of you here, I'm intrigued and I'm deeply disturbed by the world around me, and I would like to share what I've encountered. I'd like to place a trigger warning before I begin. I understand that we are academicians, and we are equipped to deal with these images, to navigate these images, but I would still like to also, we encounter so much online, and we constantly scroll through a lot of sensitive content, but I'd still like to place the warning at the beginning. Okay, so I'll start with a video of a performance by Kabir Kala Manch. Yeah, so let's begin.
कॉम्रेड पानसरेंवर हल्ला करणाऱ्या प्रवृत्तींनी जी विचार संपवण्याची परंपरा चालवलेली आहे. पानसरेंचंच वाक्य सुरुवातीला मला इथे सांगावंसं वाटते. आज अशा काळातून आपण जातोय की जेव्हा फॅसिस्ट लोकशाही मार्गानं संसदेमध्ये निवडणुकीच्या प्रक्रिया पार पाडून सत्तेवर बसतात. हा काळ परिवर्तनवादी चळवळीवर नेता गेल्यानंतर एक शोक कळा पसरते. हा शोक पसरल्याचा काळ आहे आणि कलावंतांचं, साहित्यिकांचं कर्तव्य आहे की ह्या शोक कळा पसरलेल्या परिवर्तनवादी चळवळीला दुःख झालेलं असताना शाहिरांनी या परिवर्तनवादी चळवळीला उमेद देणं, त्यांच्यामध्ये ध्येयवाद जागृत ठेवणं हे शाहिरांचं कर्तव्य आहे. ह्याच कर्तव्यातून सचिन माळेंनी तुरुंगातून एक गीत परिवर्तनवादी चळवळीसाठी पाठवलेला आहे. संपविला देह जरी संपणार नाही मती, धर्माच्या कारजानो कशी रोखणार गती.
धर्माच्या कारजानो कशी रोखणार गती.
आठवा चारवा काला तुम्ही भस्म केले होते, नाव इतिहासातून लुप्त झाले होते. त्याच चारवाकाचे तुम्हा वारस आज लावू किती, धर्माचा गारजानो कशी रोखणार गती. आठवत गोवाची गाथा तुम्ही बुडविली, तुका मारुनिया त्याची खबर दडविली. त्या तुमच्या अभंगाची आज तुम्हा वाटे भीती, धर्माच्या गारजानो कशी रोखणार गती. भिक्खूंच्या शिराला दिल्या मोहरा 100, कसा रक्तानं भिजविला अहिंसेचा तो संगर. गळे चिरुनी धम्माचे संपली का सांगा नीती,
धर्माच्या कारजानो कशी रोखणार गती.
सत्य चिरडून इथं धर्म वाढलाय, फुल्यांसाठी मारेकरी त्यांनी धाडलाय. गांधीजींचा धर्मांधांनी खून पाडलाय, गोळ्या झेलून या पाश निश्चित पडलाय. न्यायासाठी पोत मागे रोज रडलाय, रक्ताच्या थारोळ्यात सफर पडलाय. त्याच सत्यासाठी आज दाभोळकरांची आहुती, त्याच सत्यासाठी आज पानसरेंची आहुती. धर्माच्या गारजानो कशी रोखणार गती,
धर्माच्या कारजानो कशी रोखणार गती.
मनूच्या कायद्याची दहशत फार होती, अज्ञानाचे होते राज, सक्त बंदी होती. पोचला जातीचा डोलारा, अघोऱ्या त्या रीती. पोचला जातीचा डोलारा, अघोऱ्या त्या रीती. आला प्रज्ञा सूर्य भीम, आला प्रज्ञा सूर्य भीम. जाळून टाकली मनुस्मृती, धर्माच्या कारजानो
कशी रोखणार गती.
दाभोळकरांच्या आणि पानसरेंच्या खुन्यांना सरकार पकडू शकत नाही. एवढी मोठी यंत्रणा आहे, सगळे त्यांचे गुप्तहेर खाते आहेत, नॅशनल इंटरनॅशनल. दाभोळकरांच्या आणि पानसरेंच्या हत्येकरांना पकडू शकत नाही, पण हे सरकार दाभोळकरांचं आणि पानसरेंचा वारसा चालवणारे जे कलाकार साहित्यिक आहेत, त्यांना मात्र तुरुंगात हे सरकार ठेवू शकतं. त्यांना जामीन मिळू नये, त्यांच्यावरचा खटला अधिक चांगल्या पद्धतीनं कडक व्हावा, ह्याची जबाबदारी, ह्याची खातरजमा हे सरकार चांगलं करू शकतं. पण पुरोगामी म्हणून ओरडणाऱ्या महाराष्ट्रात हे सरकार दाभोळकरांची आणि पानसरेंची हत्येकरी पकडू शकत नाहीत. सत्यासाठी सॉक्रेटिस विष प्याला होता, कोपर्निकस वरती पोपचा रोष आला होता. मार्टिन ल्युथर धर्म द्रोही ठरला होता, गॅलिलिओ बघा तुरुंगात सडला होता. बघा उजेडाची फुलं धडका मरणाला देती, धर्माचा गारदानो कशी रोखणार गती. तुम्ही उजेडाची फुलं खुडली किती सांगा, धर्म क्रौर्याचा तुमचा हिशेब आज मांडा. अंधाराला घेऊन आमच्या उजेडाशी भांडा, अंधाराला घेऊन आमच्या उजेडाशी भांडा. अज्ञानाचा होईल अंत, असत्याची होईल माती. धर्माच्या कारदानो कशी रोखणार गती.
Okay. I know it was a longish sort of a poem, but I think it pretty much covers a lot of what we discuss when we discuss human rights in India. Okay. When you look at human rights and the definition of human rights, what are human rights? The first thing that you really come across is that human rights are those rights which belong to an individual as a consequence of being a human being. It is a birthright inherent in all the individuals, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion, sex, and nationality. Right? Oftentimes we look at human rights as only a legal discourse, but it's a cultural discourse as well. Cultural texts articulate what it means to be human or what it means to be denied humanity. Cultural texts such as the one that you're seeing on screen, on the right you see a graffiti art. It is by an artist, an anonymous artist called Banksy, who goes by the name Banksy. In Palestine, we saw many walls that were, painted with such art, and if you take a close look at it, it's a symbol of peace, right? Dove, which is a symbol of peace, carrying the olive, tree's branch, also indicating that Palestine. There is a lot of olive that is grown in Palestine, right? So you see that also becomes representational of Palestine and has to wear, something that's peace carrying, has to wear, a bulletproof jacket while there's a gun pointed at it. So these are also cultural texts that we need to take a closer look at because they're all telling stories, telling and listening to stories that foreground what it means to be a human person, helps us understand human rights better. It's really in the stories. I would like to bring your attention to something that Rousseau said in a discourse on political economy. I will just quickly read through this. And let's see what we can make of this. It appears that the feeling of humanity evaporates and grows feeble in embracing all mankind, and that we cannot be affected by the calamities of Tartary or Japan in the same manner as we are by those of European nations. It is necessary in some degree to confine and limit our interests and compassion in order to make it active. Now, as this sentiment can be useful only to those with whom we have to live, it is proper that our humanity should confine itself to our fellow citizens and should receive a new force because we are in the habit of seeing them and by reason of the common interest which unites them. Right? So what he's trying to say is that it is patriotism that that ties us together, and this actually gives rise to interesting questions. If you look at this particular image, this is why I gave the trigger warning also in the beginning. If you look at the one that you're seeing on the right, it is an image from give me a second, from Abu Ghraib in Iraq, which where the U.S. military conducted these call it experiments or punishment on citizens who were deemed terrorists, right? Because they did this in Iraq, they did not have to follow the Geneva Conventions either. And there was a lot of, this is an actual picture taken of a human being who was tortured in the prison cell. These are the, so when we see something like this, this is not a person who shares the same nationality. So should we not talk about it? Should we limit our interests only to our neighbors? Right? Is that it also gives rise to a question that I'm most interested in, which is the citizen versus human debate. What comes first? Is it is it a citizen, or are you a human first, or are you a citizen first, right? Especially when you speak of rights, are you asking for citizenship rights? Are you asking for human rights? I think the thing that you stumble upon the most in human rights discourse is what is the right question to ask, and what does it mean to be human, and what is the role of literature, because here we're looking at literature in particular, right? Where can you find human rights in literature? Is it something that is you need? Do you need to make a conscious effort to speak about human rights in literature? I would like to draw your attention to this particular sentence, and this this made me stop when I read Ravipar. Long ago. This is by Gulzar. This is in translation, of course. They'd heard that freedom was coming, but they didn't know when it would reach Layalpur, right? Who are the active members who decide what freedom is and where it is coming? And, is it something that has to arrive, or is it something that is a human precondition? Isn't freedom a human precondition? Or, is it something that we have to fight for? Who is fighting for? Who are the members? Who are the subjects, right? These are the larger questions that this also gives rise to. Of course, Gulzar is writing, this Ravipar is part of partition literature. So you see many such examples with partition literature. Toba Tek Singh, Monroe's Toba Tek Singh also draws something, draws a very similar image for us when he talks about who is the member, right? Someone in a mental asylum is hearing of freedom somewhere outside. So are we all inmates that way? Who gets to participate in these in the questions of rights, so to speak, right? While speaking of literature, I think we can look at it from two very complex perspectives. One is of the narrative of the self, and the other is the narrative of the other, right? The self and the other. Again, when you look at this particular image, right? This is this is quite disturbing to look at when you categorize who the other is, right? So first, let's talk about the self. Some especially Joseph Slaughter, who recognizes Bildungsroman, the coming of age novel that we are aware of, as a technique to trace how the human emerges, right? How the human is built. But when we speak of the narratives of the other, stories told about the denial of subjectivity, as we saw in the Batik Singh, or even the image that we see here, that speak of objectification and dehumanization. These are traumatized testimonies of victims, shattered systems of moral, political, and legal representation. These come under question, right? Other cultural texts as well offer such an insight. If you look at Vetrimaran's films, what comes to my mind is Viduthalai, which draws from so many social movements, mainly points at moral blindness, right? That, somehow we're all implicated in, most of us are implicated in such kind of moral blindness. And for thinkers like Hannah Arendt, not just empathy but moral judgment, as if in response to that kind of moral blindness. She says that moral judgment is a very important and an integral part of political responsibility. She taught political responsibility to her students through literature, in fact. And when we speak of human rights in literature, many writers believe that it's an artificial exercise or an unnecessary exercise to specify the connection between human rights and literature, because it is all too obvious to them, right? Many forms of literature that are politically charged, without having to pronounce them, would be slam poetry, right? I don't know how many of you have come across slam poetry before. But almost all slam poetry is written in first-person narrative, because most slam poems engage in a first-person narrative mode, which encourages a live audience to perceive the performance as a confessional moment. One of the most defining characteristics of slam poetry is a poet's performance of identity and identity politics, inspired by hip hop culture. So there is a historical context to slam poetry. So you can see that because it's informed and inspired by hip hop culture and born in Chicago. Because of its historical context, you also see that it a certain kind of people who are marginalized speak, get to voice their opinions through performance. Marginalized communities are able to access an audience immediately without gatekeepers, which is most important, and without the additional layers of editor, publisher, casting agent, or a director. I have a couple of slam poems, performances. If there is time, we could take a look at it. There is one called Hindustani Musalma. It's a Hindi poem by Hussain Hadri. Do I have about 7 minutes? I can't see the screen, so if you could tell me if I have some time, I will.
Maybe we can ask Padma.
Yeah.
Padma, you okay if she can take a little?
Or I could just share
No
this
issues
link.
at all, Shruthi. That's fine.
Yeah, Padma says you can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So there are two. One is Hindustani Musalman. Maybe I'll send the link to this later. We'll listen to this. This is because I've already referred to Palestine. Oh, it's not playing. Okay, it's not playing. So I'll probably share the link to both of these poems. Slam poetry is performance poetry, so there's a rhythm to it, and you see that today there's a lot of appropriation of slam poetry as well. The genre, the space has been appropriated by people who actually occupy the center anyway. But yeah, I'll share the links to both of these poems. Okay, so this is something that has disturbed me for days on end, and when I take this to a classroom, I see students are disturbed by this as well. A very well-known photographer called Palani Kumar, this is his article in the Caravan. This is about the manual scavengers that that don't see the kind of labor regulations that the government has laid out. A lot of people, laborers that we see around us are not really regulated by those government policies. So many of the manual scavengers are also part of that, and you see that there are many manual scavengers who who face untimely death, and this is the coffin of Mari, whose daughter Dhanushri is looking at the her father's dead body, and he was all of 33 years, and yeah, so I think this image itself speaks for itself. This is another image as part of the same feature article by Palani Kumar. Very telling images. This is, his wife, Arun Kumar's wife, who, they just had a child. We also see images of women who were pregnant, and their husbands are pass away because of see untimely death because of manual scavenging, and we have to look at it as a systemic problem, right? And that this is, and it's also probably important to look at this as many people have called it murder, right? That this is state murder. There's another image. This also, when you look at the pedestrians there, it also makes us a little more aware to see where we belong. Are we the people who look away when we see these when we see these incidents happening around us, when we see human rights violations around us? Do we even notice it, or do we look away? Are they do we categorize them as human, or do they become subhuman? If you look at Mahashweta Devi's works on the Adivasis, you'll see that she is constantly looking at the Adivasis as how are the people outside of that community looking at the Adivasis, right? So if you look at Shishu, that's what she's trying to do. So yeah, how do we look at incidents of human rights violation? Okay, this is a song, a poem titled "A Song" by Dr. Siddhalingaya. It is it's part of a collection called Hole Madigara Hadu. This is translated again from Kannada to English. Yeah, so I'll just read it out. Bash them, kick them, skin these bastards alive. God is one, they claim, but build a different temple on each street. We're all God's children, they say, yet they shrink from us, Holaya, as if we are snakes. No entry for us to their inns, their wells, their houses, but dogs that lick our shit may. They eat what we grow, take the sweat of our brow. It's only us people they shun. We're not Holaya and Madiga anymore, my brothers. They call us Harijan and laugh, my brothers. They hold meetings about us, draft laws for our sakes, pat each other's backs in our name. They liberate us. They declare in the papers how they yell from their mics. Yet no school for us, my friends, only drudgery. Nor can we hold our heads up. They're playing games with us, these bastards. So smash them, kick them, break these whole sons' bones. Yeah, so this is a very powerful poem. This was, I think, published in the magazine called Shudra by Shudra Srinivas. Yeah. these are the other human rights activists. There are plenty of human rights activists, and I started listing them. And there are too many, and many of them in jail as well. Like you see on the screen, these are also the ones who were jailed. Yeah, I would like to end with what my title is for today, which is Seeking Begumpura. And what Gail Omrit does is, I think, something that's essential for any struggle. If you're part of a human rights struggle, I think it is important to seek what she calls Begumpura. Again, borrowing from Ravidas, utopias. She says Begumpura is a kind of utopia. The posing of alternatives remain a crucial aspect of any struggle. They are, in other forms, the part of social movement discourses or frames that inspire people to action by uniting ideals with an analysis that makes a claim to possible realization. They unite ecstasy and reason, projecting a future that is achievable by present action. She borrows from Bhakti tradition, the saints of the Bhakti tradition, and they're not only talking about metaphysical utopia, they're talking of a very early utopia. And these are she recognizes them as the leaders of the subaltern castes. Who used reason to achieve that kind of utopia. They drew on non-Brahminic traditions, rejecting the ritualism and inequalities of the traditional. It is in Ravidas that Gail Omrit sees the vision he provides of Begumpura, the city without sorrow, without taxes or toil, where he could wander freely with his friends. Tukaram also, she recognizes that very similar utopia is built in the city of Pandharpur. Kabir, builds a similar city with Prem Nagri. You might have all heard of Kabir's songs, Prem Nagri or Amrapur, as he calls them. And this ties back to the first, piece that we listened to, in Sheetal Sate's voice. And I believe, as Gail Omrit and many others, that this vision of Begumpura is not something that is discontinued, right? It has inspired and continues to live in our constitution, and it has inspired people like Jyotirao Phule, Ayodhyadas, Ambedkar. So we do carry the spirit of these radical saints. Thank you. I would like to end there. Thank you for listening patiently.
Thank you, Ms. Shruthi, for the insightful address. Our second keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Padma V, is an assistant professor at Stella Maris College. She is an eminent scholar, having guided many doctoral theses and being a part of doctoral and research advisory committees. She is also a board member of our Tandem Research Club. Her areas of interest are Indian literature in English and translation, critical theory, Bhakti studies, and post-colonial literature and science. Her topic for today's session is human rights activism and justice in Indra Sinha's Animals People. She has also published an article in News India titled Still in Pursuit of Justice, Social Movement Theory and Indra Sinha's Animals People in the year 2020. I invite Dr. Padma to address the online gathering.
Thank you, Snowlin, and thank you for having me here. Like Snowlin mentioned, this is something that I have written about a little earlier, and it's not entirely new in the sense that I have also spoken about this in many places, but I thought it would be interesting to revisit it. And I did find that when I was doing my work on this, there were a few things that had changed in the paratextual aspects of animals, people. So I hope my screen is visible. So I'm going to look at a novel by Indra Sinha. The novel is called Animals People, and this is Indra Sinha. He's got the novel in his hand, and if you see, it's a novel that has the picture of a boy on top and kind of a ruined city kind of thing down. The other two pictures are of what is the Sambhavna Trust Clinic. This is a trust that was formed partly with. I mean, one of the founders was Indra Sinha, and I'm sure you can read what is written over there. The trust, the clinic run by the trust gives medical aid, free medical aid to victims of the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984. And there is a link to the trust from the official website bhopal.org. The link to the website is given over there. So, like I'm sure you would have, I mean, we all would have recognized by now that the novel deals in very interesting and very engaging ways with the Bhopal gas tragedy. And before I kind of move into what I want to focus on, I just thought we could. This novel was published in 2007. The Bhopal gas tragedy happened in 1984, so it's more than 20 years after the tragedy, and the novel became quite popular around the world. It was also shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and it's a novel that was looked at in all these using these approaches: eco-criticism and environmentalism, laughter and satire, subaltern theories, post-humanism, as part of Indian fiction in English, the post-80s scene. And there have been few discussions that link it with the Bhopal tragedy. But what I would like to focus on is this one, as the novel that is published more than 25, almost 20 odd years after the tragedy itself. It not only narrativizes how the earlier tragedy of 1984 is still it's still affecting the people of the fictional village, fictional town in which the novel is set. The town is called Khaufpur, and Khauf in Urdu is fear, so it's technically the city of fear. Nobody refers to the gas leak as the gas leak. They call it apocalypse, which is a variation of apocalypse. And so given that it's 20 years later, the novel narrativizes and in very interesting ways also participates in a specific stage in one of the many social movements that emerged in the wake of the tragedy. And therefore, in many ways, the novel itself becomes a site of social activism. We'll see how, and it also in some way draws the readers into participating in some way in this social activism. So just a brief, just to keep ourselves on the same page, what exactly happened in Bhopal. I'm sure all of us are familiar with this. There was a Union Carbide pesticide factory, Dow Petrochemicals, from where deadly methyl isocyanate leaked out. This happened on the night between 2nd and 3rd December 1984. In and around Bhopal, more than 5 lakh people were exposed to this gas, and official numbers, of course, are just about 2,259, but unofficial numbers put the toll much higher. Even today, children born in Bhopal show a lot of effects of the gas leak in the form largely of respiratory infections now. But the initial effects, as you can see, there was a sense of suffocation, a sense of nausea, stomach pain, vomiting. And in the novel, in Animals People, we will see characters who show all these symptoms, and we also have characters who are trying to actually find fight the case for the victims, and doctors who are trying to somehow help the people. I think at this point we should also remember a couple of things. The medical, the healthcare system became overloaded because the number of people who actually went to the hospitals was far more than the number of doctors who were available over there. And the problem also was that there was not enough awareness about how to treat this kind of a problem. So the image you see over there of the small child who was buried, again, like Ms. Shruti was talking about, like Ms. Shruti was saying, pictures. I mean, they carry a narrative of their own. This was one of the images that came out in the wake of the Bhopal tragedy, and uh, the picture was used also in many ways to gather support for the social rights movement, for the human rights movements. So, what exactly do we mean by a social movement? Social movements are often an informal set of individuals or groups that somehow get involved in some conflict with clearly defined opponents. So there is an us and them narrative, as Ms. Shruti was also talking about. There's a very clear us and them narrative, and as part of this us and them narrative, there is the desire to create a collective identity, which makes sure that all the people who share that identity have the same shared meaning. And in order to create this shared identity, storytelling and narration become very important. So this collective identity will ensure that everybody understands the situation in the same way. So, with this in mind, we can also see how the novel deals with the Bhopal gas tragedy. The novel does not reinterpret the tragedy in the sense that it does not, we are not told exactly what happened, because the understanding is that everybody knows it. But the novel forces us again and again to recognize that there is a need for continued intervention. This is again very important because most social movements die a natural death. Especially as time goes by, there's a I mean there's a decrease in the interest in what happened. And in 2007, actually in 2006, when Indra Sinha was approached by one of the people who was working for the victims of the Bhopal gas tragedy, and Indra Sinha was asked if he would help in setting up the trust. Indra Sinha says that he was very surprised because he assumed that the issue was already over and done with. And then in 2007, he actually went on a fast, on a hunger strike, because that was the time when there was the case was long drawn out, and the politicians, that's a quote over there which he gave in an interview. They were trying to make an out of court deal. Actually, many of the victims got something like 20 rupees a month or something, which wouldn't even get them 1 kilo of dal. So that was how the conflict got played out. It's still getting played out. So what the novel does is, one, it reminds the readers of what happened, not so much by retelling it, but by placing the novel in that space and making it obvious that what happened back then is affecting people right now. Interestingly, the it's called Animals People because the narrator is a person who's called Janvar or Animal, because he was very young when the apocalypse happened, that's the gas leak happened, and as a result of that, his spine gets bent, so he can only walk on all fours. And he is the narrator, and he narrates this, interestingly, to an Australian journalist. So in a couple of minutes we'll look at the implications of that, but also the novel takes us back to the debates between Dow and the Indian government, and between these two parties and the social activists, and also therefore foregrounds different areas or different fronts on which the cause was fought. And we'll see how the very interesting ways in which the novel uses the internet or the World Wide Web to draw the readers into the movement itself. So, what does the movement do? What does the novel do? The novel uh, it seeks to not revisit the origin of the movement, but in some way that go back to the tragedy itself. But the problem is that the narrator of the novel cannot remember the tragedy. He was very young. So what we have is the image that you saw in the first slide with that ruined city kind of thing over there. This is how the novel describes that place. This is the Dow factory that has been vacated, but it has not been cleaned out. And because it has not been cleaned out, you have most of the toxins that have seeped into the soil, and crops growing there have become toxic, which means that people who eat those crops are also ingesting toxins, which also effectively means, and this is a chain that is presented to us in the novel itself, mothers who breastfeed their children are actually breastfeeding their children toxic milk. So this is the description that you have of the scene itself. Those rusty pipes and metal stairs going nowhere. That's the place where they made the poisons. Bits keep falling off. How often did Zafar is the social activist who is trying to gather the people here together. How often did Zafar warn that if the dry grasses inside the factory caught light, poison gases would gush out and it would be that night all over again? You see a black pipe climbing into the sky. I see Shiva dark and naked. Some nights, perched like a monkey on top of this poison khana, I would look at the lights of the city and wonder if this pipe had been mended and that wheel tightened. I might have had a mother and father. I might still be a human being. This is a reference to the fact that the Union Carbide Corporation did not want to invest money in training the people working there, which meant that many of the people who were working there had not received any training on how to deal with any possible catastrophe. The temperature at which methyl isocyanate needed to have been stored was not maintained because maintaining that temperature would have cost a lot more money. So, given this, we also have this is, I think, one of the most touching, first lines of novels. This is the first line. I used to be human once, so I'm told. I don't remember it myself, but people who knew me when I was small say I walked on 2 feet just like a human being. And therein you have the pathos, and you can also see how the language does not allow you to feel pity for him. It's a very raunchy narrative. It's very satiric, but yes, this personal life of Janwar makes a lot of difference to the narrative. So, what happens also in social movements, like we saw, is that the us and them narrative is clearly defined. So, we have the antagonists and protagonists clearly, divided. But in the novel, we find that it's not that easy to decide who is an antagonist and who is a protagonist. So, for example, Ellie Barber is whose name also incidentally sounds like Ali Baba. Ellie Barber is an American doctor who comes to Kaufpur to open a clinic, free clinic. And initially, Zafar, who is the local person, who's the person there, who's a Gandhian, by the way, who's trying to get the people together to fight against Dow Petrochemicals. Zafar is very suspicious of Ellie Barber because she's an American. And he says that she might be here in order to get false data and use it against them. But as the novel progresses, we realize that despite Ellie Barber being an American, Ellie Barber is pretty much on their side and she helps them in many ways. On the other hand, Zahril Singh, the name itself again is very allegorical, Poison Singh. Zahril Singh, who's part of them, is very comfortable using the catastrophe to forward his own ends. So this us and them narrative, what we are kind of made aware of how we need to nuance those narratives. And of course, the novel also talks also brings out how different kinds of leaders emerge. Zafar is one such leader. And this irreverent narrative style, like I mentioned, is interesting because it, one, prevents us from viewing animal as a victim. Secondly, we hear animal's voice. We don't hear the voice of the narrator telling us animal story. So in many ways, this allows the text to move out of this, savior syndrome. You don't have an outsider saving you. You are given the space to narrate your own story. And this is Animal. He's very satiric. He's got a fantastic sense of humor, and he keeps saying that I will tell the story, but I will tell it in my words only. And he gets a promise from the journalist that journalist will not change anything that he has said. So the story gets narrated in Animal's own voice, and this is what he says. You were like all others. You come to suck our stories from us, so strangers in far off countries can marvel there's so much pain in the world. You have turned us into storytellers, but you make us always tell the same story. But the novel also makes us aware that if you're part of an activist movement, you need to be alert to the fact that stories can be misused, but at the same time, that stories can be used to mobilize resources. And what resources are we talking about? We're talking about two kinds of resources largely. One is material resources such as money, food, and medicines and people, which we'll come back to. And you also have non material resources. You have allegiances, you have relationships, you have commitment and solidarity. So obviously, the novel is aligning itself with the victims, and it's told to us from Animal's point of view. So you are drawn into Animal's story, and therefore makes the readers what is called the conscience constituents of the movement, which means you're not directly associated with the movement, but you have a moral alliance with the movement. But more interestingly, the novel has two framing devices. One is the editor's note, the editor to whom Animal speaks. The other, incidentally, and very, very interestingly, is a website called khofpur.com, which this was the change I had mentioned in the beginning. When I went back to it now after 3 years, khofpur.com no longer exists. It's become just the Khofpur Gazette. I'll show you some screenshots. This gives a history, culture, and present to Khofpur itself. And what happens here is this is one screenshot from Khofpur Gazette. So Booker shortlisty Animal. There is a fictional interview with Animal. Then there is an interview with Indra Sinha. This is one of the interviews that I had referred to earlier, where he talks about how the politicians are working with Dow Petrochemicals. This is again street kid Animal attending Man Booker shortlist party. And interestingly, this is not from khofpur.com, but this is from bhopal.org. And from the official website of the Bhopal tragedy, you have links to reviews of Animal's people. You also have links to the hunger strike that I mentioned Indra Sinha went on. And very interestingly, at least in 2009, Indra Sinha's own webpage, which now seems to have gone defunct, I can't find it any longer. Indra Sinha's webpage informed the readers that if you buy a book through the website link, 60 cents of the money that you spend in buying it would be used for setting up the Sambhavna clinic. And by 2019, Sambhavna clinic had provided direct free treatment to almost 45,000 people. And till 2019, through bhopal.org and through Indra Sinha's own website, there were lots of links that allowed the common public to donate to the cause. I don't really know why those links have got defunct, or if there has been a change, or if COVID has made some changes. But this is one way in which the novel actively creates a community of people who are drawn into participating in the movement. You may not even, you don't have to go there and do something. All you need to do is buy the book, and in some way you are contributing to the movement. And the website, that is Khofpur website, it encourages, at least till 2019, there was a definite encouragement for readers to buy the book and to make them participants in the movement. But again, see, the novel does not end with a clear solution, because the company, that is Dow, has not appeared in court by the end of the novel. The fight must continue. But this is an interesting line from the Khofpur Gazette. So Pablo Ganguly is a fictitious He's a fictitious journalist whose name echoes one of the eco criticism. I mean, Pablo Upamanyu Chatterjee, who's a who's an eco critic, and he asks Animal, "Do you honestly feel your account will go beyond mere literature and make people sit up?" And Animal says, "I don't know what is literature, nor what it makes it mere. I have told you the truth. What you do with the truth is up to you." And I think that's what the novel also does. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, ma'am, for the thought provoking and informative lecture. I invite Dr. Preeti to address the gathering. I call upon Joshua sir to say a few words.
Yeah, I was just typing something, but thank you, Snolan. Well, I was just typing out saying that both the lectures, both the keynote addresses by Dr. Padma and Shruthi uh, are eye openers. At the same time, I think this is a never ending debate that is going to go on, uh, the self versus the other, the subjectivity aspect of it. And more often than not, we always are caught between the binaries. And there is always the tendency that people continue to choose this side and that side. And I think as research scholars, as faculty members, I think we need to constantly engage in deliberations such as this. And it's only fair on our part to make sure that somewhere we understand why it is important for us to rely on and work towards achieving uh, a society that is completely towards human rights, justice. And if there is a violation, if there is some sort of a problem that creeps in, what is our attitude towards it? And some of those pictures that both the speakers have shown is foolproof of that. And as onlookers, do we look on? Do we simply stare at things? And do we really engage in some sort of a thing? Because there are multiple ways in which one can engage, and how we engage is also very important. Yeah, let's discuss if there are questions to both the addresses.
I welcome the professors and lecturers to share their insights. All right, so as we come to the end of the session, I thank everyone who has joined us online this evening. I thank the keynote speakers who have shed light on the significance of human rights literature and all the faculty and students who have joined today to make this session a success. Thank you again once.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Shruti, and thank you, Padma. I'm Maria Preeti Srinivasan Shruti. Joshua got us in touch with you, and thank you so much for sharing your paper today. I was able to listen to you. I was driving at that time. Thank you very much. It was an
Thank you.
interesting.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Padma, for sharing that insightful presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for the presentation. I wanted to kind of mention that Mr. Parni Kumar had actually come to college a couple of weeks ago for a lecture,
Okay.
and he shared a lot of the photos that he had taken and documented the work. The work he had done with the manual
Manual
scavengers.
scavengers.
Yes, it was, and the students responded extremely sensitively, and it would be lovely if we could have meetings like that. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And the images are so disturbing.
Yes, yes.